Welcome. Today we're focusing on the heart of any computer system, the CPU, what it interacts with and the bits that make it work. Later in this workbook we'll be learning the steps a CPU uses to run simple instructions, but first let's see what a CPU is and where it goes. First, if we look inside a typical smartphone, we'll see dozens of small components, and one of the largest is the system on a chip. To make smartphones more compact, the separate components of a typical computer have been packaged together into a single unit. The SoC contains the CPU, memory, and other chips to do things like talk to mobile, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth radio, as well as things like GPS for finding your location. But the CPU part of the system on a chip is a complex arrangement of miniature circuitry, quite a miracle really, that works just the same as a computer CPU. If we look into the center of a typical motherboard of a desktop computer, we'll see the CPU usually under a heatsink, which gets rid of the heat produced by the CPU. So CPUs have a heat spreader at the very top, and below which is the CPU die itself. And this is made up of different components. This one is a 10-core CPU because it has 10 copies of the circuitry to carry out instructions. It's very typical to see that kind of number of cores on a modern CPU. Truth is, how the latest CPUs actually work is a trade secret. But in computer science, we learn the theory of how all chips operate, albeit with lots of newer tricks taken out. So you'll be pleased to know you don't have to understand this level. We look at a massively simplified, what we call abstracted model of the CPU and the nearby memory, which looks like this. A lot simpler. The CPU, you'll notice, has a number of components though that we do need to know about, and small memory locations known as registers. These are very fast to access but incredibly small in storage. Most only store one number in binary. The first of these is the program counter. Now this remembers our place in the current program we're running. Every location in memory has an address, and the program counter stores the address of the next instruction we need to fetch. The memory address register is used whenever we talk to memory, whether that's to fetch some data or if we need to store some. It contains the address that gets to memory. When we store or fetch data, we're sending data or receiving data, and this data is held in the memory data register. Memory is, to the CPU, a long way away, so data and addresses pass down these paths called buses. Notice addresses only ever go from the CPU to memory, but data can actually go to memory when we're storing information, or to the CPU when we're fetching data. Inside the CPU, there's a component called the control unit. This is the system that coordinates everything else to execute instructions. Its job is to decode the instruction and send control signals to the component so they know what they need to do to execute the instruction. The ALU is the arithmetic and logic unit. It does maths, basically. It performs calculations and also does things like greater than or equals comparisons. Inside the ALU is a special register called the accumulator. This keeps a running total of the current calculation the CPU is working on. So that's the basic structure for you to check you understand. You should be able to draw your own copy of this diagram with the things we've heard on this video. Although don't worry about the actual contents of the memory on the right. We'll be using those contents in the next section to walk through some instructions actually being fetched, decoded, and executed.